Have you ever been to one of those places, like where you just feel the weight of history,
Oh,
where you
absolutely.
can practically reach out and touch the past?
Yeah,
Pompeii, for me, is like that.
I get that.
It's a moment frozen in time, so dramatic, and yet it's perfectly preserved.
It's that frozen quality that just like draws you in,
Totally.
There,
Well,
this
yeah.
whole city just stopped in its tracks
Hmm.
by the eruption of Vesuvius back in 79 CE.
Right.
It's an incredible snapshot, like nowhere else of the ancient world.
And that is exactly what we're diving into today. Pompeii. That Roman city, famously lost and found underneath all those layers of volcanic ash.
Layers and layers.
Our guide for this trip is the ultimate guide to visiting Pompeii, the updated 2025 version. It's our insider's look, helping us really understand this extraordinary place.
Exactly. It's packed with info. Everything from like the city's beginnings to the layout of the most fascinating sites. What we're aiming for is like to pull out the key insights. Those really interesting bits that paint a picture, a vivid picture of Pompeii without like totally overwhelming you.
We want those aha moments, those connections to the past that stick with you.
For sure.
And the truly amazing thing about Pompeii, it's the preservation. Picture this, a blanket of ash, 4 to 6 meters thick. That's
Yeah.
like a two-story building falling so fast it basically froze the city right
Mhm.
then and there. It's mind-blowing.
Totally.
So where do we even begin with this story?
Well, the area shows signs of life way, way back. Like
Yeah.
we're talking 8th century BCE. But the Pompeii we think of, the one everyone knows, that really took shape during Roman times. And the location, well, it was everything. It was on these like major trade routes. And it was surrounded by this incredibly fertile land, like perfect for farming. So naturally, it was going to boom. It was going to become this like thriving center. By the time the volcano blew, over 20,000 people lived there.
That's a lot of people for back then. It wasn't just some small town.
Oh, no, not at all. This guide really emphasizes how important it was culturally to the whole region. It had all the classic features of a successful Roman city, a big amphitheater for entertainment, the forum, the heart of everything, civic and commercial, public baths, crucial for, well, obviously hygiene, but also for social life. Various temples reflecting their religious beliefs, and get this, a really sophisticated aqueduct system.
Oh yeah, those were amazing feats of engineering.
Right. This network of channels, bringing in fresh water using gravity, is essential for a population that size. And beyond the public stuff, you had the countryside, dotted with these large private villas, showing off the wealth and influence of the residents. But of course, all of this, it was buried by Vesuvius.
The eruption itself, it wasn't like a sudden thing, was it? The guide talks about a process that took a while.
Exactly. It happened over, like, more than 2 days. The first part, the ash and pumice rain, that lasted over 18 hours.
Wow, I can't even imagine.
That first blast, as awful as it was, actually gave a lot of people the chance to escape. We found around 1,150 bodies.
Mhm.
But most people probably got out in that initial stage. The total number who died, no one knows for sure. But it shows that it wasn't instant doom for everyone.
So that layer of ash, horrible as it was, it became this incredible preserver. A strange twist of fate, huh?
Absolutely. It's this, like, huge paradox. The force that destroyed the city also gave us this amazing snapshot of it. Those layers, they sealed everything. The buildings, the frescoes, the wall paintings, the streets, pottery, even the people and animals. And while there might have been some looting right after, eventually people forgot where the city even was.
Which leads us to the rediscovery. That must have been fascinating. It wasn't just a case of check the old maps, start digging.
Oh, no, definitely not. The interest in Pompeii was reignited when they found Herculaneum, another town buried by Vesuvius.
Ah, okay.
And that sparked a wider curiosity about the area. The real digging at Pompeii, that started in 1748. And believe it or not, it's still going on.
That's amazing.
What's really cool is that a big chunk of the site is still underground. It makes you wonder what's still down there just waiting to be found. More secrets about Roman life.
It's like an ongoing archaeological mystery. The guide gives us this curated tour of the top spots. Let's start with a place that always gets attention, the brothel, or lupanar.
Yeah, can't skip that one. And you can see why. The guide describes it as this small building with stone beds. And get this, frescoes on the walls depicting various activities.
Oh, wow.
Ancient erotic art, basically. Historians debate whether they were like a menu of services or just decoration, but they definitely give us a peek into a side of Roman life that's not always visible. The guide says it's the biggest brothel found in Pompeii.
So it was probably the main one. Interesting. From private lives to public spaces, the forum baths sound pretty advanced.
Oh, totally. These baths near the Forum are incredibly well preserved. It's amazing. You can still see parts of the heating system inside the walls. Really clever engineering. And even though they're the smallest of Pompeii's bath complexes, they were considered quite elegant. Separate sections and entrances for men and women, and different temperatures, hot, cold, and lukewarm. It shows a sophisticated approach to public health and leisure. These weren't just for getting clean, they were social hubs.
And then there's the Villa of the Mysteries. Even the name is intriguing.
Right, it's outside the main excavated area. And it's famous for its frescoes, first-century Roman frescoes. And they are in fantastic condition, amazingly vibrant. The guide highlights them as some of the best examples of Roman painting from that time. The most common theory is that the frescoes depict the initiation of a woman into one of those Greco-Roman mystery cults,
Yeah,
basically private religious societies with secret rituals,
I see.
because it's a bit off the beaten path. And it wasn't excavated until 1909. It tends to be less crowded, a more peaceful experience.
That sounds nice.
Mm-mm.
Now, the Forum itself, that was the heart of Pompeii. You can almost picture all the activity.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's near the main gate. The Forum was the meeting place for everything.
Hmm.
Cultural, religious, commercial, big public events, religious ceremonies, market days, all happen there. The guide says it's usually packed with tourists, but it's the place to really get a feel for the city and how important the central space was.
The guide also mentions the Stabian baths. Sounds like they might be less overwhelming for visitors.
Yeah, true. They're the oldest baths in Pompeii, and they have a larger central chamber compared to the Forum baths,
Okay.
and importantly, fewer crowds. The guide points that out. Interestingly, they found some of Pompeii's residents there, a reminder of what happened. The Stabian baths also had a gym, or like a workout area, probably for wrestling, and a big pool. They clearly took physical fitness seriously.
Moving into the residential areas, the house at the small fountain, that sounds quite charming.
It is. The guide describes this beautiful house with a big back room, lovely frescoes, a mosaic fountain. The layout, with almost every room leading into the central atrium, suggests a wealthy owner. And get this, the roof was sloped to collect rainwater.
Clever.
Yeah, and then that water fed the fountain. Really innovative. They knew what they were doing with water management.
Now, onto the most impressive residence, the House of the Faun. That's the biggest house in all of Pompeii, right?
That's right. It dates back to the 2nd century BCE. Gets its name from a statue of a faun found in the front courtyard. The guide really emphasizes this large back courtyard with this amazing mosaic. It depicts a battle scene, really detailed. It's considered one of the most complete examples of a luxurious Roman house from that period, even better than some sites in Rome itself. It's a window into how the elite lived in Pompeii.
The Garden of the Fugitives, that name, it's both evocative and kind of chilling.
I agree. It's towards the back of Pompeii. It used to be a vineyard. When they were excavating, they made plaster casts of the people who died there, 13 people.
Oh, wow.
The guide describes it as this really powerful scene, capturing their final moments, trying to escape the ash and the surges. It's a stark reminder of the human cost of the eruption.
The House of Venus and the Shell, that one seems to be all about the artwork.
Yeah, it's away from the main tourist flow. And it has this gorgeous fresco, Venus, reclining in a shell. There are depictions of gardens, too, and a statue of Mars. What's interesting is, according to the guide, this house was being renovated when the volcano erupted. It also got damaged in World War II from Allied bombing, but they restored it in the 50s.
Pompeii had its share of grand entertainment venues, too, like the amphitheater.
Of course, a big
Yeah.
one, too.
Mhm.
This is where everyone in Pompeii would gather for the games and shows. The guide mentions that it's often a bit quieter because it's all the way at the far end of Pompeii, and it's historically very important. It was one of the first amphitheaters built in stone.
Wow.
Dates back to 70 BCE, makes it the oldest surviving Roman amphitheater.
That's incredible. And right next to it, there's the Great Palestra. Sounds like it was a place for exercise and socializing.
Exactly. Imagine a big park for exercise, a gathering place for the youth. The guide says they used it for sports, games. They even had a swimming pool there. Like the amphitheater, it's a bit off the main track, so fewer crowds. Another good option if you want a more peaceful visit.
Lastly, we have the House of Celestio. The guide says it's one of the oldest structures in Pompeii.
Yeah. Parts of it date back to the 4th century BCE, so it was probably a high-status house early in Pompeii's history. The guide suggests that the upper floors might have been an inn. It has a little garden, a covered porch, a fresco of the goddess Diana. And interestingly, they found evidence of a bakery there
Really?
and a small food shop out front, a mix of living and working, all in one place. It was also bombed in World War II, but got restored in the 70s.
It's clear Pompeii is a huge site, packed with history. The guide has some helpful advice for visitors. What are the key things to keep in mind?
Well, the site itself is
How
massive.
big are we talking?
Over 160 acres. So you need a full day, maybe more, to see everything. The guide suggests starting at the back and working your way to the front. That way you avoid the big tour groups that usually stick to the main areas.
That's a good tip. Anything else?
Practical stuff. Bring water, especially if it's hot. Bring snacks, too. Food options inside aren't great. And wear good shoes, comfortable ones. You'll be doing a lot of walking on uneven surfaces. The guide recommends taking the train to the Pompeii Scavi Villa dei Mystery station. It's right at the entrance. And buy your tickets online, in advance, especially if you're going on weekends or holidays. Avoid the lines. Oh, and opening hours vary by season, and even for different attractions. So check the website beforehand. Lastly, if you want a guided tour, go with an official one. That way, you get accurate info.
Sounds like a little planning goes a long way. The guide mentions a stat that shows how popular Pompeii is.
Yeah, over 2.5 million tourists visit every year.
Wow.
That shows just how popular it is and why it's so important to plan ahead.
So, to sum up our deep dive into Pompeii, based on this guide, it's clear that it wasn't just a city that was destroyed. It was also incredibly well preserved. It's like this amazing window into Roman life almost 2,000 years ago. From the impressive public buildings to the little details in the homes, it's fascinating. A world frozen in time.
I agree. It's not just about the ruins themselves, it's about connecting with the past. We see how people lived, their art, even their final moments.
It makes you think about the people who lived there, what their lives were like, their hopes, their dreams, all cut short, but also in a way preserved for us to see.
It really does. And it raises an interesting question for you, the listener. Think about this moment, frozen in time. What about our lives today, our tech, our culture? What would future archaeologists find if something similar happened to us? Or, since they're still digging at Pompeii, what new discovery could change how we understand the Romans?
Big questions to ponder. If you're intrigued by Pompeii, there's so much more to learn. Check out online archives, documentaries. There's a ton of information out there. It's a story that keeps unfolding, even after all this time.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
My pleasure.